What mystery was never solved? Disappearance of the Bowman children in 1966 in South Australia. 3 kids were playing at the beach and never came home. Multiple witnesses saw them playing with a mid-30s male suspect, who possibly gained their trust over time. It's crazy how many people saw this man, and he was never found. And neither were the children. Their mother died last year in her 90s, never knowing what happened to her children. And their father is alive and in his 90s as well now. Jimmy Hoffa? That head of the Gestapo guy. Heinrich Müller, who disappeared at the end of World War II and was never heard of again. And worst of all, why my internet always gets really slow when it rains. What really happened to Natalie Wood? What were they fighting about? Was her death by drowning an accident? Or was it murder? And just exactly how involved was Christopher Walken? The Black Dahlia murder. Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. I think they've gotten as close as they can with current technology. I saw it briefly mentioned on something like Drain the Ocean. From what I can remember, they were actually able to track the black box for a while after the last known radio call, and it looked like the plane basically turned around, went far out into the deep ocean, and most likely either flew until it ran out of fuel or was brought down intentionally. I mean, they went so far out into sea that the signal fell off the radar. But they triangulated the speed versus the amount of fuel that had to be left over and had a wide range just north of Australia or Antarctica. I can't remember which. DB Cooper. Ray Rivera. He went missing for 8 days until a hole was found on the roof of a building one day. When the hole was investigated, they found Ray himself, clearly dead. It's theorized he must have jumped off the neighbor hotel's rooftop, but there are a bunch of holes, pun slightly intended, regarding that theory. 1. No one staying those nights Ray was gone heard any screams or a crash. 2. The hole was pretty far away from any closed part of the rooftop of the hotel. 3. Not only his glasses were intact. They did an episode on this on the new Unsolved Mysteries series on Netflix. After seeing the distance between the hotel and where he landed, the dude damn near had to have wings to jump that far. I think he figured out some Freemason shit from his buddy's company he started working for, and they offered him for one reason or another. The Zodiac Killer was never found, to my knowledge. I thought it was Ted Cruz. Ken Rex McElroy Arphead. Shot, robbed, intimidated and assaulted multiple people, but failed to catch a conviction. Everyone in their small town got sick of him after he shot a store owner. He was shot twice from 2 different firearms. 30-46 people witnessed the shooting. No one called an ambulance. The killers have not been caught. He also kept an underage girl as essentially a sex slave, his wife. FCK that dude. More people should have shot him. And sooner. I'd be okay with this never being solved. The Delphi murders. I just can't believe more progress hasn't been made to find justice for those 2 little girls. Everybody who liked the 90s still debating who killed Tupac and Biggie. John Bent Ramsey and Madeleine McCann. I really think John Bent's brother accidentally killed her in a jealous rage and the parents tried covering it up. Amelia Earhart. What happened to her? Taken by aliens. Cryogenically frozen. She'll be awakened in a few hundred more years. Well, not solved yet. The death of Sushant Singh Rajput. There is no way in hell that it was a suicide. Yeah. It probably wasn't. Especially considering that one of the investigators stated that suicide wasn't the cause of death. There's all the theories of nepotism and the Bollywood elite killing him. But who knows? The Max Headroom incident, hack, is still unsolved. Apparently the perpetrator's identity is known to those moving in those circles at the time. Not that they would ever tell. My theory is that there was a probably young hippie broadcast engineer involved in the Chicago hacking scene who had the expertise and access to some useful equipment. Some people filmed a silly video as a prank and he helped them get it on air. James Tedford. He boarded onto a bus. And when it got to his stop, he was simply gone. His belongings were still there. There were no stops in between. So there's no way he'd gotten off. I like to think different realities crossed. And he got transported to another reality. The reason why humans need sleep. Where my F-Ken Nerf darts went. Who killed Hannibal? The Samaritan Man. Who on earth was he and how did he die? The mystery of where my FCKing tweezers went. Our unresolved mysteries is what you're looking for. The case which really piques my attention was the disappearance of Andrew Gosden. Skipped school one day and bought a one-way ticket to King's Cross Station. He disappeared afterwards and has never been found. Harold Holt disappearing off the coast of Australia. In typical Australian fashion, we named a swimming pool after him. Jack the Ripper. The body of Alexander the Great current location. Why only one sock disappears at a time? Why my wife can never be on time? What the hell my dog is thinking when she won't stop staring at me? I have your socks. Malaysia 370. JB Ramsey murder. Black Dahlia. Jack the Ripper. Jean Bennett Ramsey faked her own death. Obviously. And is now the head of the globalist cabal that runs everything. Or that's what I tell my dad. He's a big conspiracy theorist. I ask for proof and he laughs at me. They're not gonna leave proof. So I change tactics and wholeheartedly agree with him. But add my own even more ridiculous spins to the story. Like that Jean Bennett Ramsey is the head of the Illuminati. My dad. Why do you think Jean Bennett Ramsey is part of the Illuminati? Me. Oh. They really got to you, didn't they? You just bought what she wanted you to believe. Wake up. Why the big French guy shows up to wrestle with my mom after dad leaves for work. Andre the Giant is alive and wrestling your mom? What does the washing machine do with the second sock? It reincarnates as a Tupperware lid. There's a space between the inside wall of the washer and the drum. Check there. Oak Island. Edit. I am not F-king talking about the goddamn TV show. FCK the show. I'm talking about the real mystery of what's buried on Oak Island. Anybody who is disagreeing with me is just showing that they have no real idea about how deep this mystery runs. If you look at all the clues and all the evidence, it points to a vast and very ancient complex web of conspiracy as to what could possibly be down there. Over 220 years and we still cannot reach the bottom? The mystery of the Oak Island money pit is the biggest and most captivating mystery of the century. Do not confuse true history with a reality show, please. Who the hell actually wants to watch some show where they dig a hole for like 7 years? Maybe if it was like digging to the mantle, I'd watch that shit. Leave the treasure hunting to Nick Cage. Who actually let the dogs out? Well, you see, when the World Health Organization said dogs couldn't get COVID, they didn't have to quarantine anymore. Therefore, in conclusion, did Carol Baskin kill her husband? Nah. Going by her husband's friends. His flights all over the place and him burying money and gold, he almost certainly either did a runner or he made a mistake and got killed by some smugglers. I mean, she might have had a fair idea about what happened and decided to stay quiet because getting killed by drug smugglers tends to throw a spanner in the works when it comes to claiming life insurance or inheriting stuff, but that's about it. I think the worst part of that documentary is the director not doing much to show that Joe Exotic's claims that Carol murdered her husband were extremely baseless and that her husband was an incredibly shady individual who most likely was murdered by someone he was doing shady dealings with or faked his death to go live in Costa Rica and run his criminal enterprise. I genuinely don't think so, but she did gain from his death. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? You fool. Haven't you seen the video by Food Theory? Our Unsolved Mysteries. Sort by top all time. Also recommend Our Unresolved Mysteries. The fate of the Roanoke colony. For those unfamiliar, it was one of the first settlements on one of the barrier islands of the Outer Banks of what is now North Carolina. A little over 100 people had established it from England in the spot where a previous colony had been abandoned. It was pretty much doomed from the start. Since there was a fair amount of harassment from the native population, including one death within days of arrival, and I think some interest from nearby Spaniards in taking it over. I may be misremembering that. I don't know. It's been literal decades since I took that history class. But despite all this, it lasted a few years. And the governor of the colony had to leave it for some reason or another, like I said. Literal decades. He came back to find it abandoned save for the word Croton carved into the fence post of the gate and the word crow into a nearby tree. The governor and the group he was with had hoped to confirm the colonies' need to flee to the nearby native tribe. But a hurricane put a stop to their expedition and they returned to England.